Welcome back to the second of 3 Page-Barbour lectures on cosmology by Mike Turner. My name is Mark Whittle. I'm a professor in the astronomy department. I'm also chair of the Page-Barbour and Richard Lecture Committee. Thank you for coming today, and it's wonderful to see so many of you back for the next exciting chapter of the cosmological story. Let me remind you that after the lecture we'll have time for questions, and following that, please join us for a reception out in the foyer. And I'll now ask Professor Hank Thacker from the Physics Department to introduce our distinguished speaker, Professor Mike Turner. So, Hank.
Great pleasure to be able to introduce Mike for his second lecture. And rather than stand here and list all of his accomplishments, which would take more time than I'm allowed to take, I thought I would focus on one of his accomplishments that meant the most to me in terms of my own life in physics, and that was his establishment of the Fermilab Astrophysics Group, Theoretical Astrophysics Group. This started in the late 1970s. I was at Fermilab from 1976 to 1989, so I had the opportunity to be kind of a fly on the wall watching the cosmology group that Mike and Rocky Kolb built go from nothing to being probably one of the most influential groups in the country, if not the most influential. In the late 1970s, the idea that particle physics should be paying attention to cosmology and vice versa was perhaps less obvious than it is now. But there were things happening in the 70s that were leading in that direction, and it was visionary people like Mike that pushed that to its natural conclusion, where we're now waiting with equal enthusiasm for LHC results and cosmology results to find out about dark matter and dark energy. But back in the 70s, there was a lot less crosstalk between the two fields. And the establishment of the Fermilab Astrophysics Group was, I think, a real sign of the times in terms of the convergence of the two things. The story goes that shortly after Leon Lederman became the director of Fermilab, he had a hiking buddy and a climbing buddy, Dave Schramm, at the University of Chicago. Dave Schramm happened to be Willie Fowler's student and was intimately involved with what was at that time very exciting work on Big Bang nucleosynthesis. Along with Mike, I think Mark mentioned yesterday that one of the really incredible results they got, not incredible, but amazing results that they got, was that the light element abundances were sensitive enough to the number of light neutrinos that you could say that things didn't work unless the number of neutrinos was 3 and only 3. At that time, that was a gutsy prediction because the third neutrino was only a few years old. In fact, it hadn't even been directly seen yet. And nobody really knew that there weren't going to be more neutrinos showing up. So they said it was 3, and that was confirmed later on, several years later at LEP by studying Z0 decays. The story goes that Leon Lederman and Dave Schramm were climbing a mountain in Italy, and Dave Schramm regaled Leon with the wonders of Big Bang cosmology, and Leon came back with the feeling that Fermilab should be getting involved in cosmology, and so he and Dave submitted a proposal, and they got it approved, and then they immediately hired Mike and Rocky Kolb to start the group. I was, during this time, serendipitously located on the west side of the 3rd floor, which when I arrived at Fermilab in 1976 was mostly empty space, but it quickly became sort of the center of the cosmological universe with the group that Mike and Rocky built. So I just had a wonderful time in the 1980s absorbing all this cosmology, mostly by osmosis. I was doing lattice gauge theory calculations at the time, but it was a very exciting time to be around the group, and I'll always be grateful to Mike for not asking me to move over to the east side of the 3rd floor with all the rest of the particle theorists because frankly you guys were a lot more entertaining. In fact, the level of jocularity on the west side of the third floor was really high. If any of you know Rocky, you know that he's quite a comedian, and if you came to Mike's first talk, you already know he's got quite a sense of humor. So between the two of them, they kept everybody laughing on the third floor. Shortly after, sometime after they were hired, Leon Letterman was heard to remark, maybe I don't know whether I should say this or not, but Leon Letterman was heard to remark, "I thought I hired Beta and Weisskopf, but it turned out I hired Cheech and Chong." So that's, the sense of humor in the cosmology group was well known and very much appreciated by all of us. I guess you maybe have to have a sense of humor to do cosmology because it's such a weighty subject that you have to sort of lighten it up with humor. So I'll turn you over to Mike now. I just have one little capsule illustration of the depth and subtlety of Mike's sense of humor, and that is in the cosmology textbook that he wrote with Rocky Cole. The age of the universe is given in dog years. Think about that. It's very